Maya Rodriguez had always been different. At 24, she stood barely 5 feet tall with delicate features that made her appear younger than her years. But what truly set her apart were her hands. They trembled constantly, a neurological condition she'd inherited from her grandmother. The tremor wasn't severe enough to interfere with daily tasks, but it was noticeable enough to earn her the cruel nickname that would follow her throughout her military career. Growing up in a small Texas town, Maya had always been drawn to precision sports. While other kids played soccer or basketball, she spent hours at the local shooting range with her father, a retired Marine who recognized her natural eye for targets. Despite her shaking hands, Maya had an uncanny ability to anticipate the tremor's rhythm and fire between the oscillations. Her father called it a gift, but Maya knew it was more than that. It was pure determination. When Maya enlisted in the army at 18, she dreamed of becoming a sniper. The recruiter had looked skeptical when she mentioned her aspirations, his eyes immediately drawn to her trembling hands as she signed the paperwork. Infantry might be more your speed, he'd suggested diplomatically, but Maya had already made up her mind. She wanted to prove that her condition wouldn't define her capabilities. Basic training was brutal. Drill Sergeant Williams, a towering man with a voice that could shatter glass, took one look at Maya's hands during weapons training and smirked. Well, well, what do we have here? Shaky Hands Rodriguez. The nickname stuck like glue, spreading through the barracks faster than gossip. Within days, everyone knew Maya as Shaky, and the moniker carried with it an assumption of incompetence that she couldn't shake. Her fellow recruits weren't intentionally cruel, but military culture thrived on nicknames, and weakness was spotted immediately. During morning formations, she'd hear whispered comments about how she'd gotten through the initial screening. Some suggested her father's military record had helped. Others wondered if diversity quotas were to blame. Maya endured it all with quiet dignity, knowing that her performance would eventually speak louder than their doubts. The real challenge came during marksmanship training. While other recruits struggled with basic shooting techniques, Maya consistently hit targets that others missed. Her hands might shake, but her aim was eerily precise. She'd learned to read her tremor like a metronome, timing her shots to perfection. But Drill Sergeant Williams remained unimpressed, focusing instead on her unconventional grip and stance. Rodriguez, you shoot like you're having a seizure, he'd bellow across the range. Real soldiers don't need to compensate for medical conditions. His words stung, but Maya had heard variations of this criticism her entire life. She'd learned to transform doubt into fuel, using each disparaging comment as motivation to prove her worth. As weeks passed, Maya's scores consistently ranked in the top 5% of her class. Her tremor, rather than hindering her accuracy, seemed to provide a unique advantage. While other recruits fought against natural body sway and breathing patterns, Maya had learned to work with her body's rhythm. She could hold a rifle steady for longer periods than most, having developed exceptional muscle control through years of managing her condition. Maya Rodriguez had always been different. At 24, she stood barely 5 feet tall with delicate features that made her appear younger than her years. But what truly set her apart were her hands. They trembled constantly, a neurological condition she'd inherited from her grandmother. The tremor wasn't severe enough to interfere with daily tasks, but it was noticeable enough to earn her the cruel nickname that would follow her throughout her military career. Growing up in a small Texas town, Maya had always been drawn to precision sports. While other kids played soccer or basketball, she spent hours at the local shooting range with her father, a retired Marine who recognized her natural eye for targets. Despite her shaking hands, Maya had an uncanny ability to anticipate the tremor's rhythm and fire between the oscillations. Her father called it a gift, but Maya knew it was more than that. It was pure determination. When Maya enlisted in the army at 18, she dreamed of becoming a sniper. The recruiter had looked skeptical when she mentioned her aspirations, his eyes immediately drawn to her trembling hands as she signed the paperwork. Infantry might be more your speed, he'd suggested diplomatically, but Maya had already made up her mind. She wanted to prove that her condition wouldn't define her capabilities. Basic training was brutal. Drill Sergeant Williams, a towering man with a voice that could shatter glass, took one look at Maya's hands during weapons training and smirked. Well, well, what do we have here? Shaky Hands Rodriguez. The nickname stuck like glue, spreading through the barracks faster than gossip. Within days, everyone knew Maya as Shaky, and the moniker carried with it an assumption of incompetence that she couldn't shake. Her fellow recruits weren't intentionally cruel, but military culture thrived on nicknames, and weakness was spotted immediately. During morning formations, she'd hear whispered comments about how she'd gotten through the initial screening. Some suggested her father's military record had helped. Others wondered if diversity quotas were to blame. Maya endured it all with quiet dignity, knowing that her performance would eventually speak louder than their doubts. The real challenge came during marksmanship training. While other recruits struggled with basic shooting techniques, Maya consistently hit targets that others missed. Her hands might shake, but her aim was eerily precise. She'd learned to read her tremor like a metronome, timing her shots to perfection. But Drill Sergeant Williams remained unimpressed, focusing instead on her unconventional grip and stance. "Rodriguez, you shoot like you're having a seizure," he'd bellow across the range. "Real soldiers don't need to compensate for medical conditions." His words stung, but Maya had heard variations of this criticism her entire life. She'd learned to transform doubt into fuel, using each disparaging comment as motivation to prove her worth. As weeks passed, Maya's scores consistently ranked in the top 5% of her class. Her tremor, rather than hindering her accuracy, seemed to provide a unique advantage. While other recruits fought against natural body sway and breathing patterns, Maya had learned to work with her body's rhythm. She could hold a rifle steady for longer periods than most, having developed exceptional muscle control through years of managing her condition. Despite her exceptional performance, Maya found herself consistently passed over for advanced training opportunities. When applications opened for sniper school, she submitted her paperwork with confidence, knowing her scores warranted consideration. Her marksmanship instructor, Sergeant Davis, had even written a letter of recommendation highlighting her unique abilities and unwavering determination. The rejection letter arrived 2 weeks later, citing medical concerns and unit cohesion issues. Maya read the bureaucratic language with growing frustration. She knew exactly what it meant. Her tremor was being used as an excuse to deny her opportunities, regardless of her proven capabilities. The irony wasn't lost on her. She was being rejected for a condition that actually enhanced her shooting ability. Her bunkmate, Jessica Martinez, found Maya sitting alone in the barracks, staring at the rejection letter. "I'm sorry, Maya," Jessica said softly. "Everyone knows you're the best shot in our class. This is garbage." Maya appreciated the support, but she also noticed how Jessica unconsciously used her real name instead of the nickname that had become ubiquitous. It was a small gesture, but it meant everything. That evening, Maya called her father from the base phone. "Mija, I know you're disappointed," he said after she explained the situation. "But sometimes the military isn't ready for people like us. Your grandmother faced the same doubts when she started her nursing career. People saw her hands shake and assumed she couldn't handle delicate procedures. She proved them wrong by becoming the best surgical nurse in the hospital." His words provided some comfort, but Maya still felt the sting of rejection. She'd spent months proving herself, only to be dismissed because of a condition she couldn't control. The worst part was knowing that less qualified candidates had been accepted to sniper school simply because they fit the traditional mold of what a marksman should look like. Drill Sergeant Williams seemed to take particular pleasure in Maya's rejection. During the next morning's formation, he made a point of announcing that several recruits had been selected for advanced training. "Of course, not everyone is cut out for specialized roles," he added with a meaningful glance in Maya's direction. "Some people have limitations that make them unsuitable for certain positions, regardless of their test scores." Maya felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment and anger. She'd endured months of casual discrimination, but this felt different, more personal and deliberately cruel. Williams wasn't just commenting on her condition. He was actively undermining her confidence in front of her peers. She made a silent promise to herself that she wouldn't let his prejudice define her military career. The weeks that followed were challenging. Maya threw herself into training with renewed intensity, determined to excel in every area possible. She volunteered for extra duty, helped struggling recruits with their marksmanship, and maintained her position at the top of the class rankings. But she also began to notice the subtle ways her condition was being used against her. During equipment inspections, Williams would claim her rifle wasn't properly cleaned, despite Maya's meticulous attention to detail. He'd assign her to duties that required less precision, like kitchen patrol or grounds maintenance, while other high-performing recruits received more challenging assignments. It was death by 1,000 cuts, each small slight designed to reinforce the message that she didn't belong. Maya's breakthrough came during a particularly challenging field exercise. The company was conducting urban warfare training in a mock city built on the base. Each squad was assigned specific objectives, and Maya found herself designated as the team's designated marksman, a role that required precision shooting in support of infantry operations. The exercise scenario involved clearing a building held by opposing forces. Maya's squad was pinned down by simulated enemy fire from a guard tower nearly 400 meters away. Their advance was completely stalled, and the exercise controllers were growing impatient with their lack of progress. Squad leader Thompson looked frustrated as he surveyed the situation through his binoculars. "Rodriguez, you think you can take out that tower?" he asked, gesturing toward the distant target. Maya studied the shot through her scope. The distance was manageable, but the target was partially obscured by scaffolding, and there was a crosswind that would affect bullet trajectory. It was exactly the kind of shot that separated good marksmen from exceptional ones. "I can do it, Sergeant," Maya replied confidently. She'd been waiting for this moment, an opportunity to prove her worth in a realistic scenario. She settled into her shooting position, adjusting her body to compensate for the uneven ground. Her hands were shaking more than usual, possibly due to adrenaline, but she'd learned to use the tremor as a timing mechanism. Maya took her time, breathing steadily and reading the wind patterns. She could feel her squad watching anxiously, knowing that their success depended on her shot. Through her scope, she could see the exercise controller in the tower, playing the role of enemy sniper. The target was small, partially concealed, and constantly moving. She fired once, and the exercise controller immediately raised his hands to signal a hit. The squad erupted in cheers, but Maya was already scanning for additional targets. Her training had taught her to stay focused until the entire threat was neutralized. The successful shot allowed her squad to advance and complete their objective ahead of schedule. Word of Maya's performance spread quickly through the company. Even recruits from other squads began approaching her for shooting tips and advice. For the first time since arriving at basic training, she felt like she was being recognized for her skills rather than defined by her condition. The nickname Shaky was still used, but now it carried a different connotation, one of grudging respect rather than mockery. But Drill Sergeant Williams remained unimpressed. During the post-exercise debrief, he made a point of criticizing Maya's shooting position and technique. "Rodriguez got lucky," he announced to the assembled recruits. "Real combat situations don't give you the luxury of taking your time and setting up perfect shots. She'd be useless in a dynamic environment where split-second decisions matter." His words hit their mark, undermining Maya's confidence just as she'd begun to feel accepted by her peers. Several recruits who had been congratulating her earlier now avoided eye contact, unwilling to associate with someone their drill sergeant had publicly criticized. Maya realized that Williams wasn't just prejudiced. He was actively working to sabotage her reputation and career prospects. That night, Maya lay in her bunk contemplating her options. She could file a complaint about Williams's behavior, but military culture strongly discouraged such actions, especially for recruits. She could transfer to a different unit, but that would mean starting over and potentially facing similar prejudice elsewhere. Or she could continue enduring the discrimination while working twice as hard to prove her worth. The decision was made for her the next morning when Williams announced that he'd be recommending several recruits for early promotion and advanced training opportunities. Maya's name was conspicuously absent from the list, despite her consistently high performance scores. When she approached him privately after formation, his response was both predictable and infuriating. "Rodriguez, you're a decent shot, but the military needs soldiers who can perform under pressure without special accommodations," he said dismissively. "Your condition makes you a liability in combat situations. I'm doing you a favor by keeping you in a support role where you can't get anyone killed." Maya felt her anger building, but she maintained her composure. "With respect, drill sergeant, my condition has never interfered with my performance. In fact, my scores consistently rank in the top 5% of the class." She gestured toward the training records posted on the wall. "I've exceeded every standard you've set." Williams's expression hardened. "Are you questioning my judgment, Rodriguez? Because I'm looking at a recruit who thinks she deserves special treatment because she can hit a few targets on a controlled range. Combat isn't about marksmanship scores. It's about reliability, adaptability, and the ability to function as part of a team without requiring accommodations." The conversation was clearly over, but Maya had heard enough. Williams wasn't going to change his mind based on evidence or performance. He'd made his decision about her capabilities before she'd even fired her first shot, and nothing she accomplished would alter his perception. She left his office with a new understanding of the challenges she'd face throughout her military career. Maya's reputation within the company continued to grow despite Williams's efforts to diminish her achievements. Her fellow recruits began seeking her out for shooting advice, and she found herself informally mentoring soldiers who struggled with marksmanship. She discovered that teaching others actually improved her own skills, forcing her to articulate techniques she developed instinctively. During one particularly challenging training exercise, Maya's squad was assigned to provide overwatch for a convoy traversing hostile territory. The scenario involved multiple potential ambush points, and Maya was responsible for identifying and neutralizing threats before they could engage the convoy. It was exactly the kind of dynamic, high-pressure situation that Williams claimed she couldn't handle. The exercise began smoothly, with Maya scanning potential threat areas through her scope, while her squad maintained communication with the convoy. About halfway through the route, she spotted movement in a building approximately 300 meters away. Through her scope, she could see an exercise controller preparing to simulate an attack on the convoy. Maya's hands were shaking more than usual, a combination of adrenaline and the awkward shooting position she'd been forced to adopt. But she'd learned to trust her instincts and timing. She called out the threat to her squad leader, received permission to engage, and took the shot. The exercise controller immediately signaled a hit, and the convoy continued safely to its destination. What made this shot particularly impressive was that Maya had identified and engaged the threat before any of the other Overwatch teams had even spotted it. Her ability to read subtle environmental cues, combined with her exceptional marksmanship, had prevented a simulated catastrophe. The exercise controllers praised her performance, noting that her quick action had saved the entire convoy. But once again, Williams found ways to criticize her performance. Rodriguez took an unnecessary risk by engaging a target that might not have been a legitimate threat, he announced during the debrief. In a real combat situation, hasty decisions can lead to civilian casualties and international incidents. Patience and proper identification procedures are more important than quick trigger fingers. Maya felt the familiar sting of unfair criticism, but she also noticed that her squad leader, Sergeant Thompson, was shaking his head in disagreement. After the formal debrief, he approached her privately. "Rodriguez, that was an outstanding shot," he said quietly. "You identified the threat faster than anyone else and neutralized it cleanly. Don't let Williams get in your head. You're one of the best marksmen I've ever seen." Thompson's words provided validation, but Maya was beginning to understand that individual recognition wouldn't be enough to overcome institutional prejudice. She needed to find a way to prove her worth that was so undeniable that even Williams couldn't dismiss it. The opportunity would come sooner than she expected, in a situation that would test not just her marksmanship skills, but her character and determination. The final phase of basic training included a comprehensive field exercise designed to test every skill the recruits had learned. Companies would compete against each other in a week-long scenario that simulated real combat conditions. Maya's company was assigned to defend a strategic position, while other units attempted to overrun their defenses. Maya was positioned as one of several designated marksmen responsible for providing long-range support to the defensive positions. Her sector included a valley approach that offered excellent fields of fire, but also required shots at extreme range. The exercise controllers had specifically chosen this position to test the limits of the recruits' marksmanship abilities. On the third day of the exercise, Maya spotted a large group of opposing forces massing for an assault on her sector. They were positioned at the maximum effective range of her rifle, approximately 800 meters away. Most of the other marksmen in her company couldn't engage targets at that distance with confidence, but Maya had been practicing extreme-range shooting since arriving at basic training. She radioed the threat to her command post and requested permission to engage. The response was immediate. Take the shot if she was confident, but don't waste ammunition on targets she couldn't hit. Maya understood the implication. This was her chance to prove herself, but failure would only reinforce the doubts about her abilities. The conditions were challenging. There was a strong crosswind, the targets were partially concealed, and Maya's position didn't offer ideal stability. Her hands were shaking noticeably, and she could feel the weight of expectation from her fellow soldiers. Everyone knew about her ongoing conflict with Williams, and they were watching to see if she could deliver when it mattered most. Maya took her time, using breathing techniques her father had taught her years earlier. She studied the wind patterns, calculated bullet drop, and waited for the perfect moment when her tremor reached its minimal point. The shot had to be perfect. There would be no opportunity for a follow-up if she missed. She squeezed the trigger gently, feeling the rifle recoil against her shoulder. Through her scope, she watched the bullet's trajectory and saw the lead exercise controller throw his hands up to signal a hit. The opposing force's assault was completely disrupted, and they were forced to retreat and regroup. Maya's single shot had prevented a breakthrough that could have compromised the entire defensive position. The impact of her shot reverberated throughout the exercise. Word spread quickly that Shaky Hands Rodriguez had made an impossible shot that saved the day. Even recruits from other companies began talking about the diminutive soldier who could outshoot anyone despite her trembling hands. Maya found herself receiving congratulations from soldiers she'd never met, all eager to hear about her technique and training. But the most satisfying moment came when Williams was forced to acknowledge her performance during the official after-action review. Standing before the assembled companies, he had to admit that Maya's shot had been instrumental in preventing a successful assault. His words were grudging and minimal, but they were public recognition of her abilities. Rodriguez demonstrated acceptable marksmanship under pressure, he said flatly. The shot met minimum standards for the situation. It was faint praise, but coming from Williams, it felt like a victory. Maya had finally forced him to publicly acknowledge her competence, even if he couldn't bring himself to offer genuine praise. The aftermath of the exercise marked a turning point in Maya's basic training experience. Her fellow recruits began treating her with genuine respect, and the nickname Shaky became a badge of honor rather than a source of shame. She'd proven that her condition didn't define her limitations. It actually enhanced her unique abilities as a marksman. When graduation approached, Maya learned that she'd been selected for advanced infantry training, though not for sniper school. It wasn't everything she'd hoped for, but it was progress. Her exceptional marksmanship scores had finally overcome the bureaucratic obstacles that had previously blocked her advancement. She was moving closer to her goal of becoming a professional soldier. During the graduation ceremony, Maya's father sat in the audience beaming with pride. As she walked across the stage to receive her certificate, she caught sight of Williams in the crowd of instructors. For just a moment, she thought she saw a hint of grudging respect in his expression, though he quickly looked away when their eyes met. Maya's first assignment was to Fort Bragg, where she would undergo advanced individual training before joining her permanent unit. The prospect of a fresh start appealed to her: new instructors, new challenges, and hopefully fewer preconceptions about her abilities. She was determined to continue proving that excellence wasn't defined by physical perfection. The advanced training at Fort Bragg was more intense than basic training, with higher standards and more demanding instructors. Maya's reputation had preceded her, and she found herself under immediate scrutiny from both peers and instructors. Everyone wanted to see if Shaky Hands Rodriguez could maintain her performance at the next level. Her new marksmanship instructor, Staff Sergeant Johnson, was a combat veteran with multiple deployments and a reputation for brutal honesty. During their first meeting, he examined Maya's training records with interest. "Rodriguez, I've heard about your shooting," he said. "Impressive scores, but I need to see for myself whether you can perform when it matters." Johnson's evaluation was thorough and challenging. He tested Maya's abilities under various conditions: shooting from awkward positions, engaging multiple targets, and performing under time pressure. Throughout the evaluation, her hands shook with their characteristic tremor, but her shots remained consistently accurate. Johnson watched silently, occasionally making notes on his evaluation sheet. After completing the assessment, Johnson delivered his verdict. "Rodriguez, I don't care if your hands shake like a leaf in a hurricane. You can shoot better than most soldiers I've worked with. The question isn't whether you can hit targets, it's whether you can handle the mental pressure of combat situations." His words were both encouraging and concerning. Maya understood that marksmanship was only one component of being an effective soldier. She needed to prove her psychological resilience and ability to function under extreme stress. The opportunity to demonstrate these qualities would come during her deployment to Afghanistan, where theoretical training would meet harsh reality. Maya's unit deployment to Afghanistan marked the beginning of her real military career. The 82nd Airborne Division was conducting counterinsurgency operations in a volatile region where precision shooting could mean the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. Maya's role as a designated marksman would be crucial in protecting her fellow soldiers. The forward operating base where Maya's unit was stationed was a dusty, austere facility surrounded by mountains and hostile territory. Her first few weeks were spent familiarizing herself with the terrain and local tactical situation. The enemy was elusive and well-trained, using the mountainous terrain to their advantage in conducting ambushes and attacks. Maya's squad leader, Sergeant First Class Martinez, was a seasoned combat veteran who had heard about her reputation from Fort Bragg. "Rodriguez, I don't care what people back home said about your hands," he told her during their first patrol briefing. "Out here, results matter. You watch our backs and we'll watch yours." The acceptance from her new unit was refreshing after the challenges she'd faced with Williams. These soldiers had seen combat and understood that survival depended on competence, not appearance. Maya's tremor was noticed but not commented upon. Her squad mates were more interested in her ability to keep them safe than her medical condition. Her first combat engagement came during a routine patrol in a valley known for insurgent activity. Maya's unit was providing security for a convoy carrying supplies to a remote outpost when they were ambushed by enemy fighters positioned in the mountains above. The attack was well coordinated, with insurgents firing from multiple concealed positions. Maya's squad took cover behind their vehicles while enemy bullets struck the road around them. Through her scope, she could see muzzle flashes from several positions, but the ranges were extreme and the targets were well concealed. Her hands were shaking more than usual, a combination of adrenaline and the intensity of her first real combat situation. Sergeant Martinez crawled over to her position. "Rodriguez, we need you to start putting rounds on target. My guys can't advance until you suppress those positions." Maya nodded, understanding the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. Her fellow soldiers' lives depended on her ability to perform under the most stressful conditions imaginable. She identified the most threatening enemy position, a machine gun nest approximately 600 meters away that was preventing the convoy from moving. The target was partially concealed behind rocks, and Maya could only see occasional glimpses of the gunner. It would require a perfect shot at extreme range under combat conditions. Maya controlled her breathing and waited for her tremor to reach its minimum point. Through her scope, she could see the enemy gunner repositioning to get a better angle on the convoy. She had a brief window of opportunity when he would be exposed enough for a clean shot. The pressure was immense, but she'd trained for this moment her entire military career. She squeezed the trigger and watched through her scope as the enemy gunner suddenly went still. The machine gun fire stopped immediately, and Maya could hear her squad leader on the radio reporting the successful engagement. Her shot had neutralized the primary threat and allowed the convoy to continue its mission. The firefight continued for another 20 minutes, with Maya engaging multiple targets at various ranges. Her performance was flawless. Every shot found its target, and she provided the precise fire support her unit needed to successfully repel the ambush. When the dust settled, her squad had suffered no casualties, largely due to her accurate suppressive fire. After the engagement, Maya's reputation within the unit was firmly established. Her fellow soldiers began referring to her as steady instead of shaky, recognizing that her tremor had no impact on her shooting ability. The nickname felt like a badge of honor, acknowledgement that she'd proven herself in the crucible of combat. Word of Maya's performance spread throughout the forward operating base. Other units began requesting her support for high-risk missions that required precision shooting. Her ability to engage targets at extreme range made her invaluable for operations in the mountainous terrain where enemy fighters often positioned themselves at distances that challenged conventional marksmanship. Maya's most challenging assignment came when intelligence identified a high-value target in a remote mountain village. The target was a Taliban commander responsible for coordinating attacks on coalition forces. The mission required a precision strike that would eliminate the threat while minimizing civilian casualties. The operation was planned as a joint effort between Maya's unit and Special Operations Forces. Maya would provide overwatch from a concealed position, while the assault team moved in to capture or eliminate the target. The shooting position was on a mountain ridge approximately 1,200 meters from the target building, an extreme range that pushed the limits of her rifle's capabilities. Maya spent hours studying the target area through her scope, memorizing every detail of the terrain and identifying potential complications. The wind patterns were complex due to the mountainous terrain, and she would need to account for significant bullet drop at that range. Her hands were shaking with anticipation, but she'd learned to trust her instincts and training. The mission began before dawn, with Maya's team moving into position under cover of darkness. She established her shooting position on the ridge and began her surveillance of the target building. Through her scope, She could see several individuals moving around the compound, but she needed positive identification of the high-value target before engaging. As the sun rose, Maya spotted a figure that matched the target's description emerging from the main building. Intelligence had provided detailed photographs, and she was confident in her identification. The target was approximately 1,200 meters away, moving between buildings in a pattern that provided only brief windows of opportunity. Maya's hands were trembling noticeably as she prepared for the shot. The distance was at the absolute limit of her rifle's effective range, and environmental conditions were challenging. A crosswind was gusting across the valley, and heat shimmer was beginning to affect visibility as the sun climbed higher. She had been tracking the target for over an hour when the perfect opportunity presented itself. The individual stepped into an open area between buildings, providing a clear line of sight for approximately 10 seconds. Maya controlled her breathing, calculated the wind drift and bullet drop, and waited for her tremor to reach its minimum point. The shot had to be perfect. At that range, even a minor error would result in a complete miss. Maya's fellow soldiers were watching through their own optics, knowing that mission success depended on her ability to deliver under extreme pressure. The weight of expectation was enormous, but she'd trained for this moment her entire career. She squeezed the trigger and watched the bullet's trajectory through her scope. The flight time at that range was over 2 seconds, giving her ample time to observe the impact. Through her optics, she saw the target suddenly collapse, and the assault team immediately confirmed a successful hit over the radio. The impact of Maya's shot reverberated throughout the special operations community. Word spread quickly that a regular Army soldier had made a successful engagement at over 1,200 meters under combat conditions. The shot was being discussed in military circles as one of the most impressive examples of long-range marksmanship in recent memory. Maya's commanding officer, Colonel Davidson, called her into his office the day after the mission. "Rodriguez, I've been following your career since you arrived at this base," he said. "Your performance has been exceptional, and I want to discuss your future in the military. Have you considered applying for special operations training?" The offer was unexpected but not unwelcome. Maya had always dreamed of joining elite units where her skills would be fully utilized. Special operations forces valued competence above all else, and her combat record spoke for itself. The opportunity to work with the military's most skilled soldiers was incredibly appealing. "Sir, I'd be honored to be considered for special operations training," Maya replied. "I've always wanted to serve at the highest level possible." Colonel Davidson smiled and handed her a packet of application materials. "Rodriguez, based on your performance, I think you'd be an excellent fit for our sniper program. Your unique abilities could make you one of the most effective long-range specialists in the military. The application process for special operations was rigorous, involving extensive background checks, psychological evaluations, and physical fitness tests. Maya's combat record and marksmanship scores were impressive, but she knew that her medical condition would once again be scrutinized. The military's special operations community had traditionally been conservative about accepting soldiers with any physical limitations. Maya's psychological evaluation was conducted by Dr. Patricia Williams, a military psychiatrist who specialized in assessing candidates for high-stress positions. Dr. Williams was particularly interested in how Maya's tremor affected her mental state and confidence. "How do you feel about your condition?" she asked during their first session. "Doctor, my tremor is just another variable I have to account for, like wind or distance," Maya replied. "It doesn't limit my abilities. It actually enhances them in some ways. I've learned to work with my body rather than against it." Dr. Williams made notes and nodded approvingly. "That's a very mature perspective. Many soldiers with physical limitations struggle with acceptance and compensation." The physical fitness requirements for special operations were demanding, but Maya had always maintained excellent conditioning. Her small stature actually provided advantages in some areas, particularly in situations requiring stealth and concealment. She excelled in the endurance components of the testing, though she struggled with some of the upper body strength requirements. The marksmanship evaluation was the most critical component of Maya's assessment. She would be tested by the military's most skilled shooting instructors, using the same standards applied to special operations snipers. The evaluation would take place over several days and include shooting under various conditions and stress levels. Master Sergeant Thompson, the lead marksmanship instructor, had reviewed Maya's combat record before the evaluation. "Rodriguez, I've heard about your shooting, but I need to see it for myself," he said. "We're going to push you harder than you've ever been pushed before. If you can't handle the pressure, it's better to find out now than in the field." The evaluation began with basic marksmanship tests at known distances. Maya's performance was flawless, with her shots consistently grouping in the center of the targets. Her hands shook throughout the testing, but Thompson could see that the tremor had no impact on her accuracy. If anything, it seemed to provide a unique rhythm that enhanced her shooting. The second phase of testing involved unknown distance shooting, where Maya had to estimate range and adjust her aim accordingly. This was a more challenging test that required not just marksmanship skills, but also tactical knowledge and experience. Maya's performance remained exceptional, with her range estimations proving remarkably accurate. The final phase was the most demanding, shooting under extreme stress conditions. Maya was required to engage multiple targets while being subjected to various stressors designed to simulate combat conditions. Loud noises, time pressure, and physical exhaustion were all part of the evaluation process. During the stress testing, Maya's tremor became more pronounced due to adrenaline and fatigue, but rather than hindering her performance, it seemed to help her maintain a steady rhythm. She completed the course with the highest score recorded in recent memory, impressing even the most skeptical instructors. Master Sergeant Thompson delivered his evaluation to the selection committee. "Rodriguez is the most naturally gifted marksman I've ever evaluated," he reported. "Her medical condition is completely irrelevant to her shooting ability. In fact, it might actually be an advantage. I recommend her for immediate acceptance into the sniper program." The selection committee's decision was unanimous. Maya was accepted into the Special Operations Sniper program, making her one of the first soldiers with a documented medical condition to be selected for such specialized training. The acceptance letter arrived with a note from Colonel Davidson, congratulating her on breaking new ground for soldiers with physical limitations. Maya's success in special operations training was unprecedented. She consistently ranked at the top of her class in all marksmanship-related subjects, and her unique shooting style became the subject of study by military instructors. Her ability to engage targets at extreme range under adverse conditions made her invaluable for certain types of missions. The pinnacle of Maya's training came during the final exercise, where students were required to demonstrate their skills in a realistic combat scenario. Maya was assigned to provide overwatch for a simulated hostage rescue operation, positioned on a building rooftop approximately 800 meters from the target location. The scenario was complex, involving multiple buildings and civilian role players mixed with hostile targets. Maya's mission was to identify and eliminate specific threats while avoiding civilian casualties. The exercise was designed to test not just marksmanship skills, but also judgment and decision-making under pressure. As the exercise began, Maya spotted several individuals moving around the target building. Some were clearly designated as civilians, while others were playing the role of hostile forces. Through her scope, she had to make split-second decisions about which targets were legitimate and which were not. The critical moment came when Maya observed a figure preparing to attack the assault team from a concealed position. The individual was partially obscured by shadows and positioned at an extreme angle that made positive identification challenging. Maya had less than 5 seconds to determine if this was a legitimate threat or a civilian role player. Through her scope, Maya noticed the figure holding what appeared to be a weapon aimed at the assault team's entry point. The body language and positioning suggested hostile intent, but the lighting conditions made absolute confirmation difficult. Her hands were shaking with adrenaline, but she forced herself to remain calm and analytical. Maya made the decision to engage, timing her shot to coincide with her tremor's natural rhythm. The bullet struck the target center mass, and the exercise controller immediately signaled a successful hit on a legitimate hostile target. The assault team continued their mission without interference, successfully completing the hostage rescue scenario. The exercise debriefing was overwhelmingly positive. Maya's instructors praised her judgment under pressure and her ability to make accurate shots in challenging conditions. Master Sergeant Thompson noted that her decision-making process had been textbook perfect, demonstrating the tactical awareness necessary for special operations work. Upon graduation from sniper school, Maya was assigned to an elite special operations unit conducting classified missions in various global hotspots. Her reputation as an exceptional marksman had spread throughout the special operations community, and she found herself in high demand for missions requiring precision shooting. Maya's first deployment with her new unit took her to Syria, where coalition forces were conducting operations against terrorist organizations. The mission environment was complex, with friendly forces, civilians, and hostile combatants often operating in close proximity. Precision and restraint were essential to mission success. Her unit was tasked with eliminating a high-value target who had been coordinating attacks against coalition forces. The individual was known to operate from a compound in a densely populated urban area, making a traditional assault too risky due to potential civilian casualties. Maya's precision shooting skills made her the ideal solution for this delicate situation. The mission required Maya to position herself on a rooftop approximately 900 meters from the target compound. Intelligence indicated that the high-value target would appear briefly on a balcony at a specific time each day to conduct communications. Maya would have only a narrow window of opportunity to take the shot. Maya spent hours studying the target area through her scope, memorizing every detail of the surrounding buildings and identifying potential complications. The urban environment created complex wind patterns, and she had to account for the possibility of civilians entering her line of fire unexpectedly. On the day of the mission, Maya was in position before dawn, waiting for the target to appear. Her hands were trembling with anticipation, but she learned to use the tremor as a timing mechanism. The weight of responsibility was enormous. Mission success depended entirely on her ability to deliver a single, perfect shot. At the designated time, Maya spotted movement on the target balcony. Through her scope, she could see an individual matching the target's description emerge from the building and begin setting up communication equipment. The range was challenging, and the target would only be exposed for a brief period. Maya controlled her breathing and waited for the optimal moment. The target was partially concealed by a railing, providing only a small window for engagement. Her tremor was more pronounced than usual due to stress, but she'd learned to trust her instincts and timing developed through years of practice. She fired once, and through her scope watched the target immediately collapse. The mission was successful, and coalition forces confirmed the elimination of a major threat to regional security. Maya's single shot had accomplished what would have required a large-scale military operation with significant risk to civilian lives. The success of the Syria mission led to Maya being selected for increasingly complex and sensitive operations. Her unique combination of exceptional marksmanship and sound tactical judgment made her invaluable for missions requiring surgical precision. She deployed to multiple countries, always operating in the shadows, but making crucial contributions to national security. Maya's most challenging assignment came when intelligence identified a terrorist leader planning a major attack on Western targets. The individual was hiding in a remote mountain compound that was heavily defended and surrounded by civilian settlements. Traditional military approaches were impossible due to the risk of collateral damage. The mission required Maya to infiltrate enemy territory and establish a shooting position in mountains overlooking the compound. She would be operating alone, hundreds of miles from friendly forces, with no possibility of extraction if the mission went wrong. The shot itself would be at over 1,400 meters, far beyond the range most snipers could reliably engage targets. Maya spent weeks preparing for the mission, studying satellite imagery and intelligence reports about the target area. The environmental conditions would be extreme, with high altitude affecting both her physical performance and bullet trajectory. Her equipment was specially modified to handle the demanding requirements of the mission. The infiltration was conducted under cover of darkness, with Maya hiking for several days through hostile territory to reach her designated shooting position. She carried minimal equipment to maintain mobility, knowing that her success depended on stealth and precision rather than firepower. Maya established her position on a mountain ridge that provided a clear line of sight to the target compound. The range was approximately 1,400 meters, at the absolute limit of her rifle's capabilities. Environmental conditions were challenging, with strong winds and thin air affecting bullet performance. For 3 days, Maya maintained surveillance of the compound, waiting for the target to appear. Her hands shook constantly from cold and stress, but she'd learned to work with her condition rather than against it. The isolation was mentally challenging, but she remained focused on her mission. On the 4th day, Maya spotted her target emerging from the main building. Through her scope, she could see the individual clearly, confirming his identity against the intelligence photographs. The shot would be the most challenging of her career: extreme range, difficult environmental conditions, and no opportunity for a follow-up if she missed. Maya spent several minutes calculating wind drift, bullet drop, and atmospheric effects. Her hands were trembling noticeably, but she'd learned to use the tremor as a natural timing mechanism. The pressure was enormous. Failure would mean the target would disappear and potentially carry out attacks that could kill hundreds of people. She controlled her breathing and waited for the perfect moment when all variables aligned. Through her scope, she could see the target moving in a predictable pattern between buildings. She had one opportunity when he would be exposed in an open area for approximately 8 seconds. Maya fired once and watched through her scope as the bullet traveled its long arc toward the target. The flight time at that range was over 3 seconds, giving her ample time to observe the impact. Through her optics, she saw the target suddenly collapse, and she knew immediately that the shot had been successful. The elimination of the terrorist leader disrupted a major attack plot and saved countless lives. Maya's shot was being discussed in intelligence circles as one of the most impressive examples of long-range precision shooting in military history. The mission remained classified, but word of her achievement spread throughout the special operations community. Maya's commanding officer, General Patricia Davis, called her into a secure briefing room the day after her return. "Rodriguez, your performance has been exceptional throughout your career," she said. "I want to discuss an opportunity that could change the entire direction of military marksmanship training." The opportunity was unprecedented. Maya was being offered the chance to establish a new training program that would teach other soldiers how to overcome physical limitations and achieve exceptional marksmanship performance. Her unique techniques and perspective could revolutionize how the military approached shooting instruction. "General, I'd be honored to contribute to training the next generation of marksmen," Maya replied. "If my experience can help other soldiers overcome obstacles and reach their potential, that would be the greatest accomplishment of my career." The training program Maya developed was revolutionary. Rather than focusing on traditional shooting techniques, she emphasized working with individual physical characteristics and limitations. Students learned to identify their unique rhythms and use them to enhance rather than hinder their shooting performance. Maya's first class included soldiers with various physical limitations. Some had injuries from combat, others had conditions similar to her own tremor. Traditional training methods had written many of these soldiers off as unsuitable for precision shooting roles. Maya's approach gave them new hope and opportunities. The results were remarkable. Students who had previously struggled with marksmanship began achieving scores that exceeded military standards. Maya's teaching methods were being studied by shooting instructors throughout the military, and requests for her training program came from units around the world. One of Maya's most rewarding students was Private Jessica Chen, a young soldier who had developed a hand tremor after suffering a concussion in a vehicle accident. Traditional instructors had recommended her for medical discharge, believing her condition made her unsuitable for continued military service. Private Chen, your tremor doesn't define your limitations, Maya told her during their first training session. I'm going to teach you how to use it as an advantage rather than fighting against it. Chen looked skeptical, having been told repeatedly that her condition was incompatible with military service. Maya worked with Chen for weeks, teaching her the breathing techniques and timing methods she'd developed over years of practice. Gradually, Chen began to understand how her tremor could actually enhance her shooting accuracy when properly managed. Her confidence grew with each successful training session. The breakthrough came during a challenging shooting exercise involving multiple targets at various ranges. Chen had been struggling with the complex scenario, her tremor seeming to worsen under pressure. Maya noticed that stress was disrupting the natural rhythm Chen had been learning to utilize. Chen, stop fighting your tremor and start dancing with it, Maya instructed. Your body has its own rhythm, learn to read it and use it. Chen took a deep breath, relaxed her grip slightly, and began timing her shots to coincide with her tremor's natural pattern. The transformation was immediate and dramatic. Chen's shots began finding their marks with remarkable accuracy, and she completed the exercise with one of the highest scores in her training class. The other students watched in amazement as someone they'd considered disabled outperformed soldiers without any physical limitations. Chen's success became a model for Maya's training program. Word spread throughout the military about soldiers with physical limitations achieving exceptional marksmanship performance through Maya's innovative techniques. The program began attracting students from allied militaries who wanted to learn these revolutionary training methods. Maya's approach was based on the fundamental principle that physical differences could be advantages rather than limitations when properly understood and utilized. She taught students to identify their unique characteristics and develop techniques that worked with their individual physiology rather than against it. The program's success led to Maya being promoted to Master Sergeant and assigned to establish marksmanship training centers at multiple military bases. Her methods were being incorporated into official training curricula, representing a fundamental shift in how the military approached shooting instruction. Maya's reputation extended beyond the military community. She was invited to speak at medical conferences about overcoming physical limitations, and her story inspired people with various disabilities to pursue careers they'd previously thought impossible. Her message was simple but powerful. Limitations exist primarily in the mind. The culmination of Maya's career came when she was selected to compete in an international military marksmanship competition. The event brought together the world's most skilled military shooters, and Maya would be representing the United States against competitors from dozens of countries. The competition included multiple events testing various aspects of marksmanship skill. Maya's tremor was immediately noticed by international competitors and observers, many of whom had never seen a shooter with a visible physical limitation competing at the highest levels. During the precision shooting event, Maya faced her most challenging competition yet. The targets were at extreme range, and environmental conditions were deliberately made difficult to test the competitor's abilities. Her hands were shaking more than usual due to the pressure and international attention. Maya's performance was flawless. She achieved perfect scores in multiple events, demonstrating shooting accuracy that exceeded the capabilities of competitors who had trained their entire careers for this moment. Her tremor, rather than hindering her performance, seemed to provide a unique advantage that other shooters couldn't replicate. The international shooting community was amazed by Maya's performance. Competitors and coaches approached her throughout the competition, eager to understand her techniques and training methods. Many expressed disbelief that someone with a tremor could achieve such exceptional accuracy. Maya won the overall competition, becoming the first American soldier with a documented physical limitation to achieve victory in international military marksmanship competition. Her achievement was celebrated not just as a personal triumph, but as proof that excellence could come from unexpected sources. The victory ceremony was emotional for Maya. As she stood on the podium receiving her gold medal, she thought about all the people who had doubted her abilities because of her tremor. Drill Sergeant Williams's voice echoed in her memory, Shaky Hands Rodriguez. But now the nickname carried pride rather than shame. Maya's competitive success led to her being selected as the Army's chief marksmanship instructor, responsible for developing training programs for the entire service. Her innovative methods were being adopted by militaries around the world, and she was recognized as one of the most influential figures in modern shooting instruction. Years later, Maya established a foundation dedicated to helping people with physical limitations achieve their potential in various fields. The organization provided training, equipment, and support to individuals who had been told their conditions made certain careers impossible. Maya's legacy extended far beyond her military service. She had fundamentally changed how society viewed physical limitations, proving that differences could be strengths when properly understood and utilized. Her story inspired countless people to pursue dreams they'd thought were impossible. The Foundation's first major project was establishing a training center where people with various physical limitations could learn specialized techniques for overcoming obstacles in their chosen fields. Maya's marksmanship training was just one component of a comprehensive program that addressed multiple career paths. One of the Foundation's most successful programs paired experienced professionals with people who had similar limitations. Maya personally mentored young shooters with tremors, teaching them the techniques she developed over her career. The results were consistently remarkable, with students achieving performance levels that exceeded traditional expectations. Maya's final military assignment was establishing an international training exchange program where soldiers from allied nations could learn her innovative techniques. The program became a model for international cooperation in military training, with Maya's methods being adapted for use in dozens of countries. At her retirement ceremony, Maya was awarded the Distinguished Service Medal for her contributions to military marksmanship training. General Davis delivered the presentation speech, noting that Maya's innovations had revolutionized how the military approached training soldiers with physical limitations. Master Sergeant Rodriguez has proven that excellence knows no boundaries, General Davis said. Her achievements have opened doors for countless soldiers who might otherwise have been overlooked. She has shown us that diversity of ability leads to diversity of solutions, making our military stronger and more effective. Maya's retirement speech focused on the importance of looking beyond superficial limitations to identify true potential. When I enlisted, people saw my tremor and assumed I couldn't be an effective soldier, she said. But my condition never defined my capabilities. It actually enhanced them when I learned to work with it rather than against it. She concluded her remarks with a challenge to the assembled soldiers. Don't let anyone tell you that your differences make you weak. Those differences might be exactly what make you exceptional. The military needs people who think differently, approach problems from unique angles, and bring diverse perspectives to our mission. Maya's post-military career focused on expanding her foundation's reach and impact. She wrote a best-selling autobiography titled Steady Hands: How I Learned to Stop Fighting My Tremor and Start Using It. The book became required reading in military leadership courses and inspired adaptation into multiple languages. The foundation grew to include training centers in multiple countries, each adapted to local needs and cultural contexts. Maya's techniques were being used to help people with various physical limitations achieve success in fields ranging from surgery to engineering to professional sports. Maya often returned to Fort Bragg to speak with new recruits about overcoming obstacles and achieving potential. During one visit, she encountered a young soldier named David Martinez, who had been struggling with confidence issues related to a mild hand tremor he developed after an injury. "Soldier, I understand you're having some difficulties with marksmanship training," Maya said during their private meeting. Martinez nodded, explaining how his instructors had suggested he consider transferring to a different military occupational specialty. "Ma'am, they say my tremor makes me unsuitable for any job requiring precision." Maya smiled, recognizing herself in the young soldier's frustration. "Martinez, let me tell you something. 20 years ago, my drill sergeant called me Shaky Hands and told me I'd never be a real soldier. Last month, I retired as the Army's chief marksmanship instructor after winning international competitions and training thousands of soldiers." She spent the afternoon working with Martinez, teaching him the basic techniques for working with his tremor rather than against it. By the end of their session, his shooting accuracy had improved dramatically, and his confidence was beginning to return. "Ma'am, how do I know if I can really overcome this?" he asked. "Martinez, the only way to find out what you're capable of is to stop listening to people who tell you what you can't do and start proving what you can do," Maya replied. "Your tremor isn't a disability. It's just another variable you need to learn to manage. Some of the best shooters I've trained had conditions similar to yours." Maya left Martinez with training materials and her personal contact information, encouraging him to reach out if he needed additional support. 6 months later, she received a letter informing her that Martinez had graduated at the top of his advanced marksmanship course and been selected for specialized training. Stories like Martinez's became common as Maya's techniques spread throughout the military. Soldiers who had been written off because of physical limitations were discovering that those same limitations could be transformed into advantages with proper training and mindset adjustment. Maya's influence extended beyond individual success stories to fundamental changes in military policy. Recruitment standards were modified to focus on potential rather than perceived limitations, and training programs were redesigned to accommodate diverse physical characteristics rather than enforcing rigid conformity. The international recognition of Maya's contributions led to her being invited to address the United Nations on the topic of inclusion and human potential. Her speech focused on the importance of recognizing that diversity of ability leads to diversity of solutions, making organizations stronger and more effective. When we exclude people because of physical differences, we rob ourselves of unique perspectives and innovative solutions, Maya told the assembled delegates. My military career taught me that the most effective teams are those that embrace diversity and learn to leverage individual strengths rather than trying to eliminate differences. Maya's UN speech was broadcast globally and translated into dozens of languages. The response was overwhelming, with organizations around the world requesting consultation on how to implement inclusive training programs similar to those Maya had developed for the military. Her consulting work took her to corporations, sports organizations, and educational institutions, all seeking to unlock the potential of people they had previously overlooked. Maya's message was consistent. Excellence could come from unexpected sources when organizations were willing to look beyond superficial limitations. The most rewarding aspect of Maya's post-military career was mentoring young people who faced similar challenges to those she had overcome. Her foundation established scholarship programs for students with physical limitations who wanted to pursue careers in fields where they had been told they didn't belong. One scholarship recipient was Sarah Johnson, a high school student with cerebral palsy who dreamed of becoming a surgeon despite doctors telling her that her condition made such a career impossible. Maya worked with Sarah to develop adaptive techniques that allowed her to achieve the precision necessary for medical procedures. Sarah's success in medical school became another example of Maya's philosophy that limitations could be transformed into strengths with proper understanding and training. Sarah's unique perspective and adaptive techniques actually made her more aware of patient needs and more innovative in her surgical approaches than many traditional students. Maya's legacy was being carried forward by thousands of people she had inspired, trained, and mentored throughout her career. Each success story validated her fundamental belief that human potential was limited more by imagination than by physical characteristics. As Maya approached her 70th birthday, she reflected on a career that had exceeded her wildest dreams. From a young recruit called Shaky to an internationally recognized expert on human potential, she had proven that determination and innovation could overcome any obstacle. Her foundation had grown into a global organization that had helped tens of thousands of people achieve goals they had thought impossible. Military marksmanship training had been revolutionized, and her techniques were being used in fields far beyond shooting sports. Maya's final public appearance was at the dedication of the Rodriguez Center for Adaptive Excellence at her alma mater. The facility would serve as a research and training center focused on helping people with physical limitations achieve their potential in various fields. During the dedication ceremony, Maya was introduced by General Martinez, the same David Martinez she had mentored years earlier, who had gone on to become one of the Army's most skilled marksmanship instructors. Master Sergeant Rodriguez taught me that the only real limitations are the ones we accept, he told the audience. Maya's dedication speech was brief but powerful. When I was young, people saw my tremor and assumed it defined my limitations. But I learned that our differences don't make us weak, they make us unique. And uniqueness, when properly understood and utilized, can become our greatest strength. She concluded with the same message she had delivered throughout her career. Never let anyone tell you that your differences make you less capable. Those differences might be exactly what make you extraordinary. The world needs people who think differently, approach problems from unique angles, and refuse to accept conventional wisdom about what's possible. Maya Rodriguez passed away peacefully at the age of 75, surrounded by family and friends who had been inspired by her remarkable journey. Her funeral was attended by hundreds of people whose lives had been changed by her example and mentorship. The eulogy was delivered by Dr. Sarah Johnson, the former cerebral palsy patient who had become a renowned surgeon. Maya Rodriguez taught us that the human spirit knows no boundaries, Dr. Johnson said. She showed us that what others see as limitations, we can transform into sources of strength and innovation. Maya's legacy lived on through the thousands of people she had trained, the policies she had changed, and the attitudes she had transformed. Her story became required reading in military academies, medical schools, and business programs around the world. The Rodriguez Foundation continued her work, expanding its reach to help people with all types of limitations achieve their potential. Maya's techniques were being adapted for use in emerging fields, proving that her fundamental insights about human potential were truly universal. Years after her death, military recruits still learned about Steady Hands Rodriguez, the small woman with trembling hands who had become one of history's most accomplished marksmen. Her story served as proof that excellence could come from the most unexpected sources. Maya's autobiography remained a bestseller, inspiring new generations of people to question conventional wisdom about limitations and possibilities. Her message resonated across cultures and disciplines. That human potential was limited more by imagination than by physical characteristics. The final chapter of Maya's story was written by the countless people who continued to carry forward her legacy. Each person who refused to accept limitations, who found strength in difference, and who achieved the impossible was living proof of Maya Rodriguez's enduring impact on the world. Her trembling hands, once seen as a disability, had become a symbol of triumph over adversity. Maya had proven that the very thing that made her different was exactly what made her extraordinary. In doing so, she had changed not just her own life, but the lives of everyone who learned that true strength comes from embracing rather than hiding our differences.